In the beginning, the Word already existed. He was with God. He was God. Through the Word, God created everything, and nothing was created except through the Word. The Word gave life to everything that was created, and His life brought light to all people. The Word became human on that night in Bethlehem. There, in a feeding trough, lay the Son of God, the Word made human, Jesus. And on that night, the darkness retreated, as the plan of God declared, "Let there be light."
Well, good morning again, everybody. I know those kids were amazing, weren't they? Man, that was so exciting. Parents, thank you so much for letting us be a small part of their life and partnering with you to help grow them with you, giving you the tools and supporting you in raising them to be disciples of Jesus. And while they have their birthday party for Jesus right over there and get loaded up with sugar and I don't know what else, we are going to feast on the scriptures, and you can get your own sugar later. For those of you who are guests here this morning, maybe you're here because of the kids, fantastic. Maybe you're here because you were just wanting to see what this church thing was all about on the Sunday before Christmas. Fantastic. Glad you're here. Regardless of the reason, we're glad you're here. We hope you'll stop by the guest center, say hi. We have a gift for you, just a way to say thanks for coming out. And when you are ready to make yourself known, we are so ready to meet you. For those of you joining us online, believe you me, it is even more exciting here than it was to watch it. And while we're so glad that you're there and are honored that you allow us the joy of coming into your home or maybe your office, wherever you're listening, you are going to love it when you are here. Because what we celebrate this Sunday before Christmas is a real miracle of love. I mean, if there was any single word that could summarize what Christmas is, it's love. Love is what compelled the almighty, omniscient creator of the universe to step out of eternity and to take a name. Only love could have compelled him to do that. And love is what we sing about, it's what we celebrate, it's what, as the old song says, it's what the world needs now. But like the video said at the front of the service, it doesn't need that thing that we fall in and out of. What we need is something that lasts, and that's what this miracle of love offers. So we've been in this message series called Let There Be Light, where we have been looking at the beginning of John's gospel. It's the fourth book in the New Testament. And we have gone through, when we finish today, we will have gone through the first 18 verses. And this is called the prologue to John's gospel. And just like in any book, a prologue tells you something about what's coming in that book. But we've looked at it from the perspective of Christmas and the perspective of Jesus' birth. And we've taken this unconventional look at what Jesus did when he stepped out off his throne and came to earth. And, I don't pretend to try to show people anything new in the scriptures, disciples of Jesus or reading the Bible on their own. We just hope that we come along and maybe show you something a little different and better than that. We show you how to take that and now walk that into your life and to show you why this makes a difference. Because the story of Jesus didn't just start in that stable. The story of Jesus didn't start with the angel making a proclamation to Mary. No, the story of Jesus, this love story, goes back a long, long, long way. Watch this. And today I have the honor of talking about the love of Christmas. My name is Joel Norman. I'm the lead pastor here, and I love Christmas. But this Sunday, the one just before Christmas, has to be my favorite because every year we talk about love. The one thing that everybody wants, but we never quite grasp. And Christmas offers that chance to grasp it. And by the time we're done today, you're going to see that love, better than that, it's grasping you and it's holding on to you. We are in John's Gospel as we finish this series today. John chapter 1, verses 14 through 18. In the Pew Bible there in front of you, if you need it, it's page 723. And if you do not own a print Bible of your own and you would like one, keep this. It's a gift. We give them away every week. And by the time you come back, there'll already be another one in its place. We buy these by the case. And we love watching them walk out. Maybe you want to take one and give it to a friend or a coworker. And if you do that, I would suggest even writing a note to put in there. Maybe you can mark your favorite Bible verses when you give it to them. That's always a great thing to do too. It's just a way to kind of show them, hey, here's something special I want you to see. Maybe you can even highlight the passage we're studying today, because it is like the Christmas passage. It's just not the normal one we're used to hearing this time of year. But regardless of whether you're looking at our Bible, your own print Bible, electronic version, I really don't care. Words are also going to be on the screen, but I really want you to see this for yourself so you can see what the Lord is going to show you today, so you realize His incredible love for you and how that changed everything in our lives. So John chapter 1, verses 14 through 18, the Apostle John starts today's passage profoundly and simply by saying, "The Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. We have seen His glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." That was a pause for a praise break. That is the whole Christmas story in one verse. That is like the whole Bible in one verse. That is the end of the pursuit of God to us. Going back to Genesis chapter 3, when humanity falls from perfection and everything falls apart, there's God giving out the punishment to everybody. He's giving the punishment to Adam, and He's giving the punishment to Eve, and He's giving punishment to the devil. And He says, "You will bruise the heel of her offspring, but he will crush your head." It's that verse. That is the point that everything God promised happened. The Word made flesh. And John is writing about himself. He was there. We've seen His glory. Think about it. The guy writing this looked at the man. He touched him. He hugged him. He ate with him. You know, people die all the time for things they believe in. There are religious zealots all over the world from multiple faiths. We will die for what we believe in. These guys died for what they saw. They were there. They didn't just die martyr's death for a lie. Think about it. If you knew something was a lie, would you die for it? No, you'd be insane to do that. These guys were there, and every one of them died. They were willing to completely be killed, some of them crucified, for what they knew was the truth. And John writes it in one very, very compact verse. You see, the incarnation of Jesus is a miracle, and it's a miracle of love. Now, incarnation is a big, long theological word that in simplest terms, now if you go look this up in a theological workbook, it is chapters of information. Here's a very short and sweet summary. It is that miracle in which the Son of God stepped out of eternity, put on flesh, and became a human. Simplest terms. I didn't say complete terms, simplest terms. And it was a miracle of love because only love would have compelled Him to do that. Only love would have been at that point that He would have stepped down off His throne and walked our lives. You know, Jesus didn't come as some Roman or Greek demigod that walked on the planet with servants and people surrounding Him and bringing Him food and treating Him like royalty. He came as a peasant. He came to a bunch of nobodies in a nobody town that nobody even heard of, to the point that even when people knew where He was from, the area of Nazareth, they would joke and go, "What could ever come out of Nazareth? Nothing good comes out of there." Jesus came as one of us, regular old us, so that we could know Him. Only love would make Him do this. One of my favorite singers, David Phelps, wrote a song many years ago that has become one of those kind of top 20 for me in Christmas songs, of new Christmas songs. And the bridge of this song really is what just captures me and captures this verse so well. The bridge says, "Don't you know the angels were breathless as he stepped down off his throne into the cosmos his own hands had made? Don't you know the darkness protested as its reign was overthrown and victory was declared with love's display?" That's what happened. It wasn't the beginning of a story. In a sense, it was the end of a story that started in Genesis 3, but it changed everything and suddenly gave us a way to know God in a way we had never known before. John says, "We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father." Every chance he gets, the apostle was saying Jesus was not just some guy. The apostle John didn't give his life for some guy. The apostle Peter wasn't crucified for some guy. Matthew, Bartholomew, all the apostles, they didn't die for some guy. The apostles making a point to go, this was God in human form. And behind those dull brown eyes burned the fire of God. That's what he says when he says, we've seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father. Now, John goes on. John is also emphasizing to us that this is the fulfillment of another prophecy in Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, that says, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son and will call him Emmanuel." Emmanuel is a Hebrew phrase that means God with us. And the apostle is saying right here, that was God with us, God on our planet. That was a miracle. And to make sure that we don't go the other direction and say that Jesus was all God but not really a person, he writes, "The Word became flesh." And in the language he's writing in, which is Greek, he leaves no doubt that the Word became something that here to date he had not been. He was a bodiless, eternal being, the Son of God, the Word. Then he became something he had not been before. He became human. I mean, wrapping our brain around how this works, I don't know. How do you take eternity and compress it into humanity? I don't know. But that's what John is saying. We've seen it with our eyes. We've touched it. He ate with the guy. He knew who he was. He watched all of it. Now, the apostle goes on. In verses 15 and 16, John, not the same John, a different John, John the Baptizer, testified concerning him. He cried out, saying, "This is the one I spoke about when I said, 'He who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me.' Out of his fullness we have received grace in place of grace already given." You see, the love of God also gave us incredible, indescribable, unimaginable grace. Now, John the Apostle is taking us back to what he was talking about in verses 6 through 8. For us, it was 2 weeks ago. We were talking about John the Baptizer and his ministry and his mission. Now, if we go down just a few more verses in chapter 1, we catch the story of John. And it was this in verses 29 through 31. Here's the fuller explanation. It says, "The next day, John," that would be John the Baptizer, not the human author John, "saw Jesus coming toward him and said, 'Look, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. This is the one I meant when I said, a man who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me. I myself did not know him, but the reason I came baptizing with water was that he might be revealed to Israel.'" This was John the Baptizer's cousin. He grew up with Jesus. He knew Jesus, and he knew something was special about him, but at that point he realized, Jesus, my cousin, is Jesus the Messiah, the Son of God, the Savior of the world, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, who removes it from us. That was different. That was new. That was special. And so John, the human author, is reminding us of what John the Baptizer did by rolling out the red carpet and serving as a witness, a testimony to the identity of Jesus. And John the apostle tells us that he came in the fullness, Jesus came in the fullness of God, that there was nothing lacking in him. That everything we would ever need was bound up in him because there was nothing ever lacking in him. And that all of our brokenness, all of that emptiness would be filled by him because he lacked nothing. And that's grace. That is something we don't deserve. And so John then puts this weird phrase at the end of verse 16, that we've received grace in place of the grace already given. Some translations of the Greek version will say that we have received blessing after blessing or blessings on top of blessings. And the difficulty in this last phrase is John is using a very small set of words, and he's using an expression that his original audience would have understood. For example, if I tell you, hey, leave it all out on the field, you probably know I don't really mean that we're going to go out to the quad and play a game of flag football. You know what I mean is give everything and don't hold anything back. You understand that as an American audience. His audience would have understood what he meant. And he's making this two-layered expression. On one level, he's saying that God has given us grace. And when we get to the end of that grace and he has just had enough, more grace kicks in and keeps on going. And so there was a limitless supply of his grace. Then there's a deeper meaning that they also would have heard, and that is the idea that the Old Testament law was God's grace to them. They didn't view the law as a punishment. God had made the people of Israel his people, and because he had redeemed them, he then gave them the law and said, this is how you live as my people. They viewed that as grace. And John is saying, now, as good as that was, remember, John is the Jewish man. Okay, he's not Gentile, he's a Jew. He was raised as a little good Jewish boy. Probably, if he didn't go to synagogue school, he would have heard this, he would have known this, and certainly as an apostle, he put all this together. He's saying, we've been given this grace, but wait, there's more. We've been given an even better grace. Now, there's no real good way in English to say that in a few words, so translators kind of give us some shorthand. Now, with that in mind, that he has this two-layer meaning, you can't get to the end of God's grace, and also that the Old Testament law was grace, and now we've been given better grace, he goes on in verse 17. And he says, for the law, see, that's why this makes sense now. He says, for the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Now, verse 18, no one has ever seen God but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father. He's made him known to us. Now, see, that's why John seems to be taking this left turn. It's like, where did Moses come from? Because his audience would have understood at the end of verse 16, he's talking about the law. Because the rabbis viewed Moses as the first redeemer, because he gave them the law. The law was never a way to find salvation. They never would keep the law to the point that God would say, hey, you've done enough good stuff, now you're my people. No, they were already his people. The law told them how to live. And since Moses was the human voice delivering that law, they viewed Moses as the first redeemer. But he was still a human. He still sinned. The Bible is not silent on his sin. It is quite apparent. He didn't see the promised land because of his own rebellion. His sin was obvious, okay? But they held him in very high regard because of that. Because back in the time when Israel was becoming a nation, when they left Egypt, when they came out of slavery, all the other nations and all the other religions of their time, their so-called gods didn't tell them how to live. So these people had to try to figure it out the hard way. So they'd cut themselves, and their God didn't respond, so they would kill their children as a sacrifice, and the gods didn't respond. They'd go to holy war, and the God didn't respond. But the Lord came along and said, number one, I'm real. Two, this is how you live, and find my blessing. That's why it was grace. They didn't have to wonder. They knew. Now, they failed abysmally, but at least they knew. And so the author of Hebrews, later in the New Testament, takes a different metaphor, but the same idea, to try to convey this thought of Moses and the law versus Jesus and grace. And I don't think there is verses, but we tend to think that way. Hebrews chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 says, Moses was faithful as a servant in all God's house, bearing witness to what would be spoken by God in the future. But Christ is faithful as the Son over God's house, and we are his house, if indeed we hold firmly to our confidence and the hope in which we glory. Now, the author there is saying a very similar idea. Moses was a steward or a manager of God's house, that is, God's people. So as Moses was doing that, he was still just the manager. He wasn't the owner. The author of Hebrews is saying the similar thing that the Apostle John is saying. When Jesus came along, new day, new game, because now Jesus owned the house. It was his to do with as he wills. And because of that, he had the authority to bring us into a relationship with the Father in a way Moses or the law couldn't at all. It was impossible. And so Jesus showed us the Father in a way that nothing else ever could. I mean, suddenly our entire concept of God changed. Our entire concept of humanity changed. Until Jesus, life was exceedingly cheap. Until Jesus, if you were poor, good luck. Society didn't care about you. Live or die, it didn't matter. Life was cheap. Jesus came along, and suddenly all life was valuable. And suddenly he changed the game because he showed us that the Father cared about the least of us and the greatest of us. That in God's eyes, he didn't care. He loved all of us and offered this grace to everyone willing to accept it. He showed us the Father in a way that allowed us to actually know him. Because John comes along and says, no one's ever seen God. That's a standard rule of the Bible. You don't see God and live. You don't look into his face and live. You are annihilated. No one does this. This doesn't happen. But John goes, but Jesus has shown us the Father. Behind those eyes, we have seen the fire of God, and we have seen the mercy of God, and we've seen the grace of God. John is reminding us that it was Jesus' voice thundering on Mount Sinai giving the law. It was his law. That when Moses went into the tent of meeting and met with God, it was probably the Word, Jesus, that he was meeting with. And that all these pivotal moments when people see God, John is going, hey, you saw Jesus. We just didn't call him that yet. But he was always there. John takes every chance he can to go because he was with God, because he was there, because he was himself God. He takes every chance he can because in the first century, he's fighting a heresy that started to believe that Jesus either was completely God and not a human, or completely human and not God. And John is saying, no. By the Holy Spirit, he's saying, you have to fuse these ideas together. He's both. And it's so much richer than either one by itself. It's both. And he's shown us a way to know the Father because we know him and because of the mission that he came to do. Many people's favorite Christmas carol is Silent Night. Mine is O Holy Night, but Silent Night's number 2, okay? And on Christmas Eve, when we sing this, we do all the candles, we're going to sing the third verse. The third verse of Silent Night is based on John chapter 1, verses 14 through 18, what we just studied. So here's that third verse. Sing it with me. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth. See, sometimes we can sing something so many times that we forget the wonder of what we're saying. That Jesus, the eternal Son of God, who had no reason to walk on this planet, who had everything he could want because he was the Son of God, enjoying the sound of praises of angels and the saints that have gone before us, had that moment. That moment that I imagine he looked at the Father and said, I'll go, Dad. Because we love them, I'll go. And somehow he stepped down off that throne into the cosmos his own hands had made, into the womb of Mary, whom he formed in her mother's womb, into the very one whose eye color he picked, whose fingerprints he shaped. And he allowed himself to be nursed by her and cared for by her, raised by her and Joseph for the purpose of going to the cross and dying the death that was ours. Because Genesis 3 proved that when we only had one mission, just don't eat this one fruit. Do everything else you want. Just, you got one job. We failed at one job. We failed at one job. And look, we can't judge Adam and Eve. We'd have done the same thing. We do it every day. Don't do that. Hey, I'm going to go do that. Come on. But Jesus came anyway, knowing all of that. He came anyway. Again, that's why I say on the Sunday before Christmas, this is my favorite one because we talk about love. Because if we can just grasp this great love, we would shout it from rooftops. We'd understand that this is the best news ever. Because of his great love, God has come to us. We could not go to him. We couldn't pile enough good stuff up to get to him. I can't pile all my good things and stand on it and then reach him. It's still too far away. He's too perfect. He's too holy. He's too distant. He's too other. And so in that sin and in my lostness, is in my hopelessness and in my joylessness and in my loveless life, he came down so that he could lift us up. We couldn't get to heaven, so he stretched heaven down to us. That's love. That's love that is way beyond what we say when I say, oh, I am in love. Oh, I love Christmas. I wish I had a different word for that because that is out of this world kind of love. And what we as disciples of Jesus get to do every year at Christmas time is we get to retell the story again. And we get to tell people and show people again why we believe this stuff. And why do we believe this stuff? Because it changed me. I was there. I was there when it happened in my life, and I know what he did. And so do you. And so we get to share that love. So share his love this Christmas. Share his love. That's our mission for the next 7 days. Technically, it's our mission 365. And 366 on leap years. But we talked about it all this series. At this time of year, the society leans towards us and they'll sing Silent Night. They'll sing all this truth. They'll sing Away in a Manger. They'll sing all these songs that say, Jesus, here's our chance to go, let me fill in the gap of what that baby did. Let me tell you what the baby grew up to do. So share his love. I have a few ideas ways you can share his love. One, you can share his love by inviting someone to the Christmas Eve celebration. Saturday, it's here. Saturday is Christmas Eve, 5 p.m. It is going to be amazing. Oh my goodness. Our worship team, tech team, been working so hard on this. Tony and I have been preparing this tag team thing. If we wanted to get out of tag team preaching, I don't think we could. We get to like around September, October, and y'all start hitting us up going, are you going to do that again? You going to do that again? Yeah, I guess we have to now. But we love it because we actually have a blast doing it. I kid about it. But it's a chance for us to, again, tell that story. What an honor for us to be able to share that. What an honor for you to be able to invite those friends. We have a few of the invite cards left, and if you don't have them and you want one, I'm sure we could print some up this week and give them to you, but they wouldn't be as nice as the professional ones. We can give you something to put in their hands. Give them the bulletin. It's got the information on it. But just invite them. And we timed it out at 5 o'clock. This was actually based on a survey we did where we asked people about this, and 5 o'clock was kind of the winner. Because the idea was that you could bring people here, and then you still had time to go to grandma's house or mom's house for Christmas Eve dinner. And some of you have Christmas Eve traditions, and we did that on purpose so that you could leave here. It's about an hour, 5-minute service. So that way you have a chance to go have dinner with your family, and then you get to talk about it. See? Method of the madness here. Okay, that's one thing you can do. Invite them to Christmas Eve. Also, you share the love of Jesus with someone on Christmas Day. This is a favorite of mine, but it's a quiet one. I'm a pretty loud guy. You probably know this. But this is a quiet one because this is a chance we get to share the love of Jesus with someone on Christmas Day that might be lonely. There are people that don't have family nearby. You can invite them over for Christmas lunch or Christmas dinner or just Christmas snack. It's not about the food. It's about people, about relationships. Maybe you know someone who's had a really hard year. Maybe they've had a hard season. Maybe this is their first season after a loved one has passed. That is a really hard, Christmas is really hard the first year or two. And I've been told by some the first 10 years even, it can be very hard and lonely. This is your chance to share the love of Jesus with them and just invite them over. You're not trying to make them feel better. That's not the point. You can't. Only Jesus can do that. And they know that. It's a chance for you just to love them. That's all. And just let them love you back. Or maybe a single adult, maybe someone who can't get home this year. Maybe they have to work on Christmas Eve or later Christmas Day, and here's your chance, okay? Share his love with someone. No one should be alone on Christmas Day. You know, I'm kind of old-fashioned that way. My love of Christmas. No one should be alone that day. Ask around. And maybe if there's someone on your heart and your mind, you kind of see their face now, that's probably a signal that you need to ask them. And if they say no, they say no. But you still can share that love. Also, one thing we do as a church, a tradition we started several years ago, is we share the love of Jesus with first responders on Christmas Day. You know, there's a group of people that have to work on Christmas. Police, fire, rescue, hospital, nursing home. Some people just have to work. And they do, and that's just, they have to do that. I mean, grocery stores don't have to be open. They just stay open on Christmas Day because we keep forgetting the cranberry sauce. You know, movie theaters don't have to be open on Christmas Day. They open up because we keep getting sick of our families and going to see movies. I mean, but they don't have to be open. Police, fire, rescue, hospital, they have to be there. Nursing home, they have to care for people. And so this is a chance that we take to take something to them and to say thank you. Thank you for serving our community and working on a day that I don't have to. Thank you. I highly suggest taking something like in a basket, prepackaged. Prepackaged is always best. Some departments have policies against, like if you take them like a casserole or something in a dish. Some groups have policies that don't let them eat that because the world is an evil place, and sometimes people will try to poison first responders through things like that, and they can't take that. I highly suggest something prepackaged, beef jerky, energy bars. Candy's great, but they're going to get a ton of candy, okay? We're not the only people in the world doing this, but they're going to get lots of candy. So maybe something savory. Fruit, I've been told fruit's good. I've even been told vegetables are good, but I don't know. You're going to take them like a head of broccoli? I don't know how that works. I don't know, and I'm not going to tell you to do that, but something. Just share his love with them. For our family, what we do is we get up, way before the crack of dawn. I'm usually up before everybody else is. I love Christmas. We do the present thing, and then we head out and we do that. And we're in PJs, and we're kind of just barely fixed up, presentable for the day. That's just what we do. Your mileage may vary, but that's something you can do. Another way you can show the love of Jesus and share this story is by showing your family and friends, get them to watch either the replay of the Christmas Eve service or the video for Christmas Day. I have seen this Christmas Day video twice. I don't have words. It came out so great. Our worship team, both on the stage and behind the booth, worked so hard on this, and it came out so wonderfully. And you saw a bit of clip there earlier. I get to wear my ugly Christmas sweater. Courage, our church mascot, the lion, he makes an appearance with me. It is incredible. You just want to do this. It's going to be available, I think, around 7 a.m. on Christmas Day. You can watch it with your family, watch it with your friend. You can watch it anytime. It's on YouTube, okay? So once you hit Christmas Day, watch it anytime. It's there. It's streaming. It's available whenever you want it. If you want to come here, you can watch it here. We'll show it here at 10:30 next Sunday, and you can watch it here. But you can watch it anytime you want. Watch the Christmas Eve replay. But just because you know how we do this, okay? We're going to really roll this back and remind them it's not just about the gifts. Those are great. That's fun. But it's so much more, and we're going to show them all that. And that's how we do this. So Christmas Day video, that's the way you can show the love of Jesus. Because, again, another song that always I reflect on at Christmas time is this bridge to this song called One King. And the bridge says this: he could have chosen to break through the sky with anthem and angel wings, but he knew he'd understand a baby's cry and learn love from a servant king. That's the miracle of Christmas, his love. That love. So we don't celebrate the birth of a baby so much as we celebrate God becoming human, because that is a Merry Christmas.